Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us. We're with the City of Ukiah, and this is a virtual workshop to discuss proposed improvements to the section of North State Street that is between Low Gap and Norton. So, if you've driven on this before, and I assume you have, this is the last remaining section that has those old concrete panels because it used to be Highway 101 until 1969. So what we have tonight is a virtual webinar. And so I can see that we have a number of attendees who are logged on, and we will go through a brief presentation this evening. And then you may comment or answer questions, provide input by raising your hand, and I have to select your name to allow you to speak. So just show us that you're interested in participating by raising your hand, and we can facilitate that. So we've allocated about an hour this evening to go through the presentation and answer your questions. And we'll try to be as efficient as possible, but we also want to make sure that everyone has a chance to get all of their questions answered. Okay? So I'm going to introduce myself. I'm Shannon Riley. I'm the Deputy City Manager for the City of Ukiah. And we have two other staff people here. We have Andrew Strickland, who's our Senior Engineer, and we have Andrea Trincato, who's our Projects and Grants Administrator. And without further ado, I appreciate so many people being prompt. I'm going to turn it over to Andrew, who's going to deliver the bulk of the presentation this evening. Are you ready, Andrew?
I'm ready. Thank you, Shannon.
Do it.
Okay, let's confirm you can all see the screen here. All right, well, welcome. I am Andrew Strickland, Senior Engineer with Ukiah. I work with a lot of the construction management and inspection on the projects around the city, the big construction going on. I've been involved with a lot of the State Street work and a lot of the other work going on, Gobi and Maine and throughout. So no doubt you've probably seen me crossing the street here and there. So thank you for attending this discussion regarding North State Improvement Project. Um, Purpose of this presentation, we're going to just share some of the challenges that we have along this corridor between Norton and Low Gap, as Shannon said there. And we look at some of the possible improvements that we could do and get some of your feedback as then we're just seeking grants for this project. So to be clear, this point, we're just getting your feedback to help us then be eligible and be able to apply and get ideas for what we want to do when we get a grant. Um, so this project really is as Shannon said, the last section where you can see in the photo there, we have the concrete panels of the old highway. A lot of them, there's been a lot of maintenance over time. It makes it really hard. They're very bumpy rides. It's hard to do any utility work with the concrete panels there. And so we'll talk about some of the utility work that needs to happen as well. So there's a balance we're looking for between keeping this corridor very efficient for the vehicles. It needs to be treated uniquely as such for the type of road it is, and also trying to get some much needed improvement for pedestrian and bicycle safety in this area. So before discussing the potential improvements, let's just look at this project, where it's located and why this one's so important. All right, so the project location. This is one of the primary corridors within Ukiah. Really connects the residents with schools, parks, businesses, other public services, transit stops. It really is a mix between industrial, commercial, residential. So the map you can see right there, in green are the portions of State Street that are currently, they're all paved in asphalt. Actually, they've all been done within just the last few years, all the way within city limits, except for this last portion shown in red there. Um, so this, you can see, like I said, this is the old highway there, and it'll be good to get this one to be a smoother ride. It as these concrete panels are shifting and adjusting, and um, it's pretty bumpy. So there is a result. Um, through from the old highway system, the sidewalks are inconsistent. There are limited or non-existent bicycle facilities. The utilities are old. The lanes are very wide. And the pedestrians comment we get a lot is they feel very uncomfortable crossing the road. A lot of the crosswalks you can see in the photo right there. Um, so we want to make this feel like a safer crossing and keep people to be able to get access to the businesses there. Make sure we retain some parking um, and some of the things we'll talk about this evening are design options. Like I said, everything is just optional right now. Things we've seen that have worked in the past and things that have not worked, or things that could just be adjusted, maybe in size or location. So nothing has been designed yet. So with the bicycle route, these lines right here in green show where we currently have bike lanes, and some of these bike lanes are the on street. They're they uh, marked, and they very clearly, and they are we've made a lot of safety improvements to the bike lanes, and there's also the Great Redwood Trail that is shown on the map there as well. And so we want to be able to basically get people to get all the way north and south. With the recent improvements we did on Main Street, adding the bicycle lanes, you really could make a complete connection throughout north and south, the entire city limits. On State Street, you can cut over on Main and get back over on State Street. Um, and there's also connections we're looking to connect you to the rail trail up at Low Gap Brush Street. So we want to be able to keep a consistent network for cycling as well as improving our roads. So that is one of the priorities. And so we can get kids to school, people to shopping, seniors, giving them access. And so there are basically a lot of goals that we have here. So the uneven concrete slabs, the deteriorating pavement, they create those big maintenance issues. A lot of the rough driving, and there's some bumps that you feel as you're driving through. The underground, the water and sewer infrastructure, they're also aging. Some of those are, getting nearing 100 years old, and they require, more and more often repairs that need to happen. So this project would have the goal of replacing, upgrading those water and sewer utilities. There's also missing sidewalks, non-compliant ADA ramps, um, and I don't know, about you, but I've personally witnessed many close calls, seen a lot, someone cross State Street in the crosswalk, and the car in their right lane maybe will be stopped, which actually blocks the view of the pedestrian. I have a slide showing that just a bit, but then you don't. It makes it so the car in the left lane going through, they won't even see them, and then they'll be slamming on the brakes. So there's been a whole lot of close calls on this route. I've personally witnessed, and I've heard that from a lot of people. So this roadway width, it contributes to a higher travel speeds, creates conflicts for the left turning vehicles that can lead to congestion and safety concerns. Currently, without that designated left turn pocket, when someone is turning left, they stop, which forces this domino effect. It stops, all the cars behind them. Um, you have a couple close rear ends happen there, but then some of those cars might make a dangerous move where they get into the right lane right away, maybe right in front of another vehicle. That's been known to cause accidents. A lot of fender benders. So there's also, you'll see in the photos there's limited landscaping. The tree coverage, can be uncomfortable in the hot summer months. So that is a goal of the city is we're adding more tree cover where we can. And with the new standards that we have, we're making the tree wells better than they were before. Before they would just be cut an opening in a sidewalk and you pop a tree into it. Now, as we see that those roots cause problems lifting up the sidewalks, or they lift up the roadway, or they get entangled with the utilities. So our new standards on the tree wells is that we're really focusing on deeper tree wells, and we have these root barriers to make the force those roots to go down. Um, Here. Here's an example of a missing sidewalk section. Um, it's very difficult if you're in a wheelchair, you're a senior, or if you're pushing a stroller. We have several locations like this in the project area. Um, and so we want to provide a more continuous and reliable sidewalk system here, but also keep the roadway functioning, its peak performance. We're not trying to restrict vehicle movement in favor of pedestrians, but we want to improve both. This location, you're familiar with here. I mean, it's the crosswalk goes right into a curb, right? There is no, when that was put in, obviously there's no consideration of that time for a curb ramp. Um, and so locations like this, or even elsewhere right by this location, the ramp will go right into a driveway, which is obviously very unsafe. Um, so those things will need to be fixed. And it's actually law that if we're going to do any paving of a road of any kind, we have to upgrade all pedestrian facilities to be ADA. So all the curb ramps have to be installed or upgraded to current standards just for us to do any type of overlay or reconstruction at all. So, um, for us to be able to pave, we will address these non-ADA sidewalks. So beyond accessibility concerns, pedestrian visibility at crossings, it's another major safety issue that residents that they'll experience. I've seen that just today. So at this location, this is a spot that could definitely use flashing beacons, and use, maybe there's other improvements we could do that get the attention for the motorist that there is a crosswalk here. And not only is there the crosswalk, but you see that there's actually a pedestrian right there, and that's is where your view is be obstructed. You don't see them crossing, and then by the time you get up there, hopefully it's not too late, but it'll definitely get your heart going. um, so there are these blind spots that need to be addressed, and let people know, whereas because we're not going to install any traffic signals on this portion, we do need these pedestrian signal crossings that alert people that someone is waiting to cross the road. So why this project? We're looking at this project because there's been a lot of these issues that I've already mentioned. And we need to address, the safety concerns. We need to replace the utilities. There are definitely some speeding concerns that are happening in this area. We have a traffic counter, that's out there with the speed radar signs that are up there. And so we're seeing that cars will frequently be in excess of 50 miles an hour, or at least very commonly at 45, and they will, we're, and it'll be very inconsistent, especially with the cars then who are going to speed limit. So we are trying to address some of the speed concerns and improve safety. It's also a physical and visual divide that happens on State Street in this area here, where the old highway really just splits the town, and so you don't feel safe crossing. So that's not good for business. You're on one side of the road, and now you're looking for a safe place to cross. We want you to feel much more comfortable, be able to visit some of these stores or businesses. Um, and we are looking at, support from the local businesses by creating this corridor that feels welcoming and visually appealing. Also, getting traffic at a safe speeds. Just a few stats here. These mentioned earlier, these multi-lane roads, they're notorious for speeding, and the roads, they look like a highway, so cars treat it like a highway. And when the left turning cars stop traffic, people drive even faster to get around and make up for the lost time. So we had some data that was taken back before some of the other improvements that were done on State Street, showing just how many collisions, would happen in that area. And there are, it's kind of the untold data that we've discussed, other than people actually having reports of having either vehicle or pedestrian accidents. There are many, many more almost accidents. and people that you've seen that people have been part of. And so actually the good news is that there was a recent citywide survey or citywide report that was done from the Ukiah Police Department that showed a dramatic decrease in traffic collisions of roughly 65% just in the last year. That was heavily attributed to both law enforcement and then the recent roadway improvements that have happened. So that is great news to see of how there's so many collisions and accidents happened before, and already with a lot of the safety measures and just the improved roads, we've had such a drastic spike, a drop decrease in our accidents. So addressing the roadway safety requires more than just one solution. That's why a lot of the engineers kind of look at the approach of the three E's actually. So this is where they look at a three-legged stool, right? The stool doesn't work very well with one or two legs. You got to get that third one in there at least. So you look at the engineering being just one of the tools that you use to improve your road. That's your physical design, things that encourage the drivers to either slow down or drive the appropriate speed. And that could be narrower lanes, some locations that could be a roundabout, maybe that could be a speed bump, maybe it's a curb extension, maybe it's a raised crosswalk. There's just a lot of tools. Not saying you throw them all out there, but these are just different things that engineering will look at how they can help control the speed. Um, but the second E there is going to be the enforcement with the police. And whether that's with a radar or just the police patrols. Downside of that is that it's effective, but as soon as they're gone, those speeds usually return. People start speeding again. The third E that we're looking at is just the education, where we're just trying to get the community aware of the importance of driving the appropriate speeds. We have school outreach programs. You can have speed feedback signs, the kind that tell you, hey, you're going too fast in this area. So we are looking at all three of those means as a way to just improve this road and safety. Looking at, like I said, this is not designed. These are just options of things we're looking at. Um, a center turn lane would definitely help, organize the movements and reduce the congestion caused by vehicles. We have a lot of studies that have shown where that's worked, where we've done it, and it's done in a way that it's not too wide. I mean, it narrows it down where people get concerned about, emergency vehicle access. There's not something where, we're going to make this so wide that you can't get emergency vehicles around you. It's definitely we're making it to the appropriate widths. The designated turn lane, it also protects the pedestrian in the crosswalk that may be hidden from view by the car in the next lane. But also the wider sidewalks that we're looking with the ADA improvements that creates a safer, more comfortable pedestrian route. We also want to get the on-street bicycle lanes to complete that network of cycling for north-south and connection to the east and west to the trails that we have. The additional street trees and landscaping. These are things that make it more comfortable to shop and work in areas, makes them much more attractive, especially when they're done in the right way. Whether or not, like some of the options that we've looked at in certain other areas, if that was a trees within a center median, if done appropriately, there's just things that you look at what's worked and what hasn't worked, and in certain areas. And the right tool is not the right tool in every location. And so that is evaluated, and sometimes you learn from experience of saying, well, this worked in this area, this part of town, and it was less impactful or it was negatively impactful potentially if used in a different location. So those are things that we're all working on. I don't want people to get the wrong idea. I mean, I work in this town and I'm here all the time, and so I'm very aware of what works and what doesn't, and I hear what the feedback, what people say, and it's something I want things to work. I don't want to put something out there that's going to slow and make it hard and to get to businesses. I personally drive a larger truck, so it's something that I'm keeping those things in mind as far as how we can make things better for both the motorist and the pedestrians. Um, So this project, we're seeking the support of the local businesses, and we want to make this appealing to residents, to customers, businesses, and improve the safety for everyone. So the city, we appreciate the community taking time to participate in this discussion. The public input. It's an important part of the design process. It helps ensure this project, actually reflects the needs and the priorities of the residents, the businesses. And so with that, I'd like to open things up for discussion, for any comments from there.
Thanks a lot, Andrew. Yeah, just anecdotally, last week I was out dropping some information about this project off to businesses. So I was in the project area and I was maybe out for an hour and I was nearly rear-ended. I witnessed a pedestrian almost get hit, and almost without exception, every single person I spoke to in the businesses, when I explained what we were looking at, had a story to tell about a horrible crash or a near miss or something. And so we've been living with this for a really long time, and we're excited about the opportunity to get get some changes made. So with that, does anyone have any questions or comments? And you can let me know by raising your virtual hand, and then I can unmute you. And in the meantime, Andrea, do you have anything to add? Andrea is going to be one of the lead grant writers on this project, and so she's been very instrumental. You're muted. Um, there you go.
Okay, great. Thank you. Um, yes, we're looking at several grant options. So we're interested in what the community has to say and to incorporate the feedback into the grant applications. I just to get get the discussion started, I wanted to put a question out there, but I do see that there is a question already posted. It
Yeah, we
says,
do have a question in the chat there. Yeah.
okay, would the city consider parking protected bike lanes so people could be further buffered from traffic?
Yeah, so I'll take that. It's absolutely anytime we can get a buffered bike lane. So we do the plan is, like I said, to have the designated left turn lane, but also maintain the parking on State Street area. So that's not something we're getting rid of. And we've minimized the lane widths. So, we reduced them, we get those down to the 11-foot lanes, and then we build out from there. And so we get as much room as we possibly have um, to allow for the bike lane and a buffer along with there. We did that on the south section of State Street. Really, if you go from Washington, all the way down south to the Beacon, when we added the bike lanes there, we actually have some very wide buffers in that area there. So we will be um, looking at the widths, anything available real estate we have with after we've done the new sidewalk improvements to see what we can do for the buffers. I can't promise anything right now. We haven't seen what we have to do, limitations we have with sidewalks and the improvements there. So, but where we can, we will. The buffer is one of our high priorities.
Thanks, Andrew. Yeah, I assume people can raise their hand. If for some reason that tool is not working, feel free to write a question or a comment in the chat as well. I see Stephanie has her hand up, so I'm going to unmute you. You should be able to speak now.
Okay. My question for you guys is, will you be working with the business owners on the street before, because the original plan that I saw at the last meeting before that grant was not approved, had a left hand or had a block of a left-hand turn lane where people couldn't turn into my business. So I just want to make sure I mean, we're not going to stop this. This could, after COVID, this could be the death of our business. So I'm really nervous about it. But my biggest thing is right now is that we're going to get some say so to make sure everything is considered because there is quite a few businesses obviously down the road that are in kind of weird spaces, if really.
Yeah, that's a great question.
Mhm.
I'm gonna start and I'm gonna turn it over to Andrew. We before we embarked on the phases 1 and 2 of the streetscape project, we studied cities all around that had done similar projects to figure out what worked and what didn't work, especially for the business community. And so, we pledge to be in constant, regular communication with the businesses. Where we know we can work around business hours, we will attempt to do that. We absolutely take into consideration movement in and out of your business as well as trees. We don't want them to block your signage or the visibility of your business. So these are all things that help us create a better project. And so I'm going to turn it over to Andrew there.
Yeah, that's one of the things I'm very cognizant. I don't want to put a median in there just because we need more trees. I mean, that's not something I want to do there. Anything that's going to block access for businesses coming at you northbound or business going southbound of how they get into it somewhere. So we're not trying to block anyone. So those are spaced sparingly where they will be put, not to have an impact as far as to where, and even at that, there's times when since we're working so much with the businesses, when we put out some plans and someone I know on the we adjusted medians that were done down by the movie theater area because of that. Well, we know the type of cars that have to turn into the movie theater, and so we had that changed. After talking with some of the property owners, and we knew. Um, so it's not something like, well, this is you're going to take it. It's like no, we're going to be working with everyone on the design, and then throughout the whole process, as Shannon was saying, the construction, working with the business owners. I don't even know how many people, business owners, have my personal cell phone right now, just because when they call me up and I say, all right, I'm usually out there doing inspection. And so they will call and say, why is there an excavator parked in front of my driveway? And then I'm sure enough, I'll be right down there and yelling at some of the guys. So there is definitely will be very accessible. This is all, assuming if we get a grant and we get design and get construction going, the whole process, we've got our cuts and bruises through some history doing this, and so it's not our first go around on this, you say, but
Thank you.
you're muted, Shannon.
I was muted. Yep,
Oh.
I just caught that. Thank you. So I just muted Stephanie, but raise your hand again if you have additional questions. We do have a question in the chat. The question is, have we done parking counts to see how many of the parking spaces are actually being used? Perhaps parking on one side of the street could be removed. What do you think, Andrew?
That's something that will be studied with the design with the consultants. We'll do traffic counts and some use. I mean, there is a lot of parking, and in that portion of state. I mean, as of right now, I'm not saying that we're taking any parking away. That's not a goal at all. You never go with that type of goal, but there it's something that we would evaluate and find out if there's something that could be reduced. Maybe that allows for maybe that's the thing that gets you the wider sidewalks you need if we're able to remove some of that parking um, or some other design features. But that'll be done through traffic counts and studies to see where these businesses are, what are the businesses that these parked cars are going to, and um, so yeah, that'll be studied.
I will say I received an email from someone after we started promoting this webinar, who was specifically inquiring regarding parking around the Norton Street area. And I think in connection with the yoga studio, I think when they have classes that quite a bit of the on-street parking is utilized. And so there was one person who expressed concern about retaining that. There is newer legislation in California, and Andrew, can you help me with the details that restricts parking near intersections more so than we currently have in this area?
Yeah, so they had the restriction. It's usually about 20 feet or so, depending on if there's bulb out or what type of if it's intersection. So how close you can actually have a parking space next to the crosswalk. We currently have many parking spaces that are within that violation period, and we have not removed them because we're trying to hold on to them as long as we possibly can until we're forced if we have to then actually remove that parking space. But any new design that goes in, there will be we won't design a new parking space to be right next to a crosswalk. So there will be everything will be set back, and it's for good practical reasons as far as you have a car right there and you can't see someone who's staying in the crosswalk trying to get across. So I totally understand it. We're just trying to be very cognizant of, not having, limiting more parking. And so our benefit, where you come to smarter design, because we do try and think about more than one thing at once, maybe in those areas where you can't have a park space next to a crosswalk, well, that's a good place to put a fire hydrant where you can't also park in front of a fire hydrant. So you try and merge those things together so you're not taking up two parking spaces.
Thank you, Andrew. I don't see anyone with their hand up right now, so I'm going to ask the question that I think may be in the back of people's minds. You probably know what's coming. Are we going to put bulb outs in this section of State Street?
You just throw me right in the fire on that one. Um, um, so those bulb outs or curb extensions or everything you have there, those things, if they were put under here, they will be considered. But we're not going to make any intrusive anything here, knowing that this is a very kind of like industrial business, commercial type area, things would be scaled back. They're not going to stick way out there, making it hard for big trucks to be turning around or anything like there. So that's not going to be um they would be very like with larger radius and they'd be put in an area um where you already have, maybe a parked car, the area there where it's not you would not be hitting it. So if they are used, they'd be used in a minimal way. We've had in some other projects past for where bulb outs that some worked better than others on other parts of the downtown, and there are some. I will admit, I've hit the same bulb out some of you have hit. We don't have to start naming locations, but yeah, there are some spots that definitely could have been improved, altered, things like that. And so those are conversations we have, especially going forward. And because after that design, when we did another phase of that project, there was some consultants, that said, "Hey, let's do another, big bulb out in this other location." And we're like, "Well, hold on, pump the brakes here." And they wanted to scale everything back, and there's locations and sizes that they wanted to do that that were not installed, were not put in on the next phases of some of the projects we did. Have you seen like on the Perkins work that we did out there? We didn't put bulb outs going in there because of the type of road it is and of how what the value it would bring there. And so we're not trying to you know get cars to hit them. So they are on the table, but they're definitely something that are looked at more closely than probably anything else as far as not wanting to make mistakes in that area.
Thank you, Andrew. We didn't rehearse that. I did
No.
truly just throw Andrew Andrew under the bus. So I appreciate that. That's what happens when people don't raise their hand, though. We do have a question in the chat. This might be slightly off topic, but I'm going to go ahead and take it anyway. Would the city consider making the North School Street near Ruddock consistent with the rest of North School Street south of Scott in terms of street parking? Yeah, that's totally separate from this project. But are you familiar with that area, Andrew? Yeah, I don't have a response for that. What else are we curious about? Anyone
Uh,
just want to tell us a horror story, something you've witnessed in this area? We could use that for the grant too. Andrea, did you
um,
have something to add?
yeah, I was just gonna add, we're gathering community feedback, so I just wanted to throw it out there. I'm gonna post this in the chat, but do you feel safe traveling on State Street between North Norton Street and Low Gap Road. In particular, if you're a pedestrian or a cyclist. So feel free um, to put it in the chat or raise your hand.
Also, just like Stephanie from Slam Dunk, if you are connected to a business that's on this part of the corridor and you have specific concerns, the sooner we know about those, the better we can likely mitigate those too. So feel free to share any concerns that you have. All right. I'm not seeing any hands raised or new chats. I want to respect everyone's time. I also want to make sure that we have given everyone a chance to participate. So we'll hold on here for a couple more minutes. Oh, here's another question. Um, so this is a comment. The sections that have had the road diet are now comfortable on a bike. That is not true through this section. Andrew, could you please explain the term road diet?
Um, it's something I keep using that. It's literally just shrinking the road right now. If you look at the uh, as far as the photo, I have it up, but if you have two lanes in each direction, and now we are reducing that to the one lane in each direction with the designated left turn, then that gives you that extra real estate that we can now make wider sidewalks. You could have the addition of bike lanes. There are just gives you much more real estate to work with. Plus, also uh, reducing the lane width. Sometimes you get these lane widths, and they might be, 15 or 16 feet wide in certain areas, whereas in most of the other streets, like we have, we go down there and they're actually like 11 foot wide. A lot of the new roads are actually that way. So you have um, just narrowing it down. That kind of visually causes the motorist actually seeing the lane lines be narrower. You drive, more carefully. Um, it's on the concrete panels. Next time you drive in that area, you can see it's a kind of hard, at least for me and for others, I know, to just see the lane delineation when it's just all the white gray as opposed to not having the black asphalt with the striped lanes there. So doing that road diet, making things narrower, better striped, um, it helps reduce this, the speeding, makes brings your attention to the crosswalks for the pedestrians. It's another improvement there. Um, but it also, the biggest thing about having a designated left turn lane, it actually helps keep your traffic moving. So if you're in the through lane, you're constantly moving. And so when you make that turn, you get out of the way and cars can keep on going, as opposed to you stopping and they're like, all right, I'm going to get in the left lane. I'm going to jump in the right lane. And that back and forth movement makes a lot of dangerous movements, and it causes the cars to stop behind you. And that's what happens on the highway all the time. As far as when you got to stop in front of you, and it's this big effect. That's probably too many
Yeah.
words.
No, thank you. And there was all kinds of traffic engineering done before we implemented the first phases of the streetscape. And some of that was to measure the efficiency of the street. And even though there were fewer lanes, the studies show that traffic moves more efficiently through the section because you're removing those left turn cars. You're seeing the pedestrians more clearly. This is not accounting for cars that are going 50 miles an hour in a 25, right? But if you're driving the speed limit and you're traveling the way you're supposed to, a road diet can actually help a street operate more efficiently. It's counterintuitive. Traffic engineering is magic. We have a response to Andrea's question, do you feel safe on State Street between Norton Street and Low Gap? The response is no, exclamation point. As a pedestrian, it's often very narrow and cars drive fast enough to kick up dust and rocks. So yeah, that's no good. Here's another question. Is there a possibility of using the raised crosswalks like on East Gobi? They seem to do a really good job of slowing traffic without creating congestion. Andrew?
No, not likely on this type of road. Um, the amount of traffic, the volume you have here, it's not the best fit for here. At that Gobi intersection, why that was done, if you remember, there used to be a center median right there. And it's really to get attention for the trail that cuts through. And so it's trying to get people to really slow down near the railroad tracks where the Great Redwood Trail goes across. Um, and we removed that little median there and added that raised crosswalk, which is essentially just a big, like speed bump, and it does slow cars down in there. But with the amount of volume, the type of how this road is categorized as an arterial, it would not be the right tool for that area. Um, that so it's the speeds. There are the other things we're doing with the lane diet is what we want to do to keep traffic at the appropriate speed. And like I said before, we can't. Sometimes you think like, okay, well, how do we slow them down now? How do we do this? Like, you can't over engineer these things because then it to try and stop every infraction there because then it makes you not for a smooth ride if you put a speed bump every 100 feet and you're trying to slow them down or you try and do every safety measure out there. That's why you have that combination of also with the enforcement with the police and then education, just the community and trying to say, all right, kids are walking here. How do we slow everyone down? And not slow. When I say that, I'm not trying to get cars to go slow. I'm just go to the appropriate speed limit, what's already out there. Um, so another longer explanation.
I actually
Okay.
have one for you, Andrew, as well. From the previous application I was working on, I can't recall the width of that roadway. Do you recall what it is?
Of State Street.
Yeah.
Um, Top of my head, I don't know for sure. It's usually traditionally about 60 feet or so in that area. Just from it fluctuates a few places on state, but just
Yeah.
remembering back on some of the other projects,
Well,
55 to 60.
yeah, and it just makes me think back to like when I was visiting businesses along the corridor and crossing the street, that the street crossing is 60 feet long. So in terms of adding, as you mentioned, they would be reduced bulb outs or pedestrian refuge at a median. Those are elements that you sometimes see in road diets, and they're used to shorten the crossing length. So it creates a more comfortable street crossing for pedestrians. And, in light of that, I just wanted to post another question for the group. Do you think the proposed improvements would improve safety or the general feeling of traveling on this corridor?
So we also have a question in the chat. I'm not sure if we have the data to quantify this yet, Andrew. How much safer will this section be? How much are cars expected to slow down with the proposed changes? The person says, I think the speed limit is 30 or 35, and people often go 40 to 50. How might that change?
Well, if we look at some of the work, like I said, we're treating this differently than the downtown border area that we've done, like which is the traditional streetscape sections, So this is outside of there, but yeah, you're right. It does get, I believe, 35. It might be Clara North or so forth. I'm trying to remember where that cutoff is. Um, and so you're trying to get cars to be, you're trying to give them to 35, trying to, or even 40, closer to that range. But yeah, very frequently you got 50 plus that they're doing. So doing a lot of these improvements, if you do have one lane in each direction with the designated left, then you can't have somebody who's flying 60 miles per hour, when they got cars right in front of them, barring that they don't drive into the bike lanes and center median. And then you just have, it's a police issue. Um, so there are some obviously improvements that'll happen right away. Um, the design engineers, when this would be hired out for consultant with traffic studies would be done and we can hopefully get some better data on, what we can anticipate. It will be an improvement. I just don't want to make any promise right now what those numbers will be, but I'm 100% confident it will be an improvement.
Yeah, I mean, and as Andrew pointed out earlier, we have seen from the police department a 65% reduction in traffic collisions, which is largely attributable to street improvements that do the types of things that we're describing here. So we have seen some measurable improvements. It's a little difficult to forecast a specific area. Another comment from the chat says that narrowing the traffic lanes will decrease speeds and make it feel safer on a bike. Having a clearly marked lane also makes it feel safer. If you buffer the bike lanes, it's even better.
Totally agree.
Yeah. All right. I see some people have dropped off, and we won't be offended if you've had all your questions answered and you want to leave. I did make a note of your name. I will figure out how to track you down later. No, I will not. Um, so again, no offense if you feel like you've had all your questions answered, but please feel free to raise your hand. We'll hang out here for a couple more minutes. Just say a bunch of words or something. I don't know.
I actually have another one to post here. It's which improvements do you think are most important?
Hmm.
Oh.
I had a hard time choosing. We have a survey that was a multiple choice question, and I don't know. It's all important.
And maybe to mention, if the people on this webinar don't already know, you can mention that we have this surveys out there where they could find those survey boxes to fill them out. You've put them around town. People want to drop a note
Yeah,
in.
we dropped survey boxes off in almost all of the customer facing businesses in the project area. So go get a pizza at Slam Dunk Pizza and fill out a survey there, or get a car wash or detail at Redwood Tree. They've got surveys there. So all along the project corridor, there are some survey boxes. Takes just a couple minutes to do it. Um, and also, if you think of something after the webinar is over, you can send us an email. Andrea, did you put an email in the chat already? We'll just send it to the city manager's office, which is CM for city manager office at cityofukiah.com. I see you typing, Andrea. Are you going to put that? Thank
Yeah.
you. Appreciate your help. Okay, we have another. Um, A question somewhat off topic, but any discussion about installing speed bumps or other traffic calming measures around Todd Grove Park? Since we don't have any other hands up at the moment, Andrew, would you like to talk about the mixed blessing of speed bumps?
Um, we've put some in here and there, and they come. Um, there's how to phrase it. You put them in, and some people, absolutely love them and request them, and then you equally have on the other side the people who absolutely hated when they go in. So that's something that we've started through a complete streets, ad hoc to be looking at a better speed bump policy on where these go. So there are certain streets that are eligible for them, depending on what kind of traffic flow is supposed to be there. Um, and so we look at those locations, but then there's also policies to see, all right, well, what's the buy-in from the people actually, living there, of how many of them would want one in their area. That doesn't mean that you necessarily get one or don't get one. Um, but there's kind of this big evaluation process. So we don't want to just put them in everywhere. It does bring a noise with them as you hit them. There is the dun, dun, that happens. You try and minimize that. You try and just less wear and tear on the, vehicles per se, but they are appropriate in the right location. So like I said, we are looking at more and more locations. I can't speak specifically, sorry, about for Todd Grove Park, other than it is obviously an area we would want to even more so around a park when I have reduced speeds there. But I'd have to see if that is how that would play with drainage and just the general circulation. So I can't say anything specific.
Thank you.
I'd like to just add that the looking at improving this corridor, we've looked at budget expenses. We're just under 10 million with a project of this size. So we're really reliant on grant funding. We're currently looking at the active transportation grant, and that one is really dependent on or prioritizes safety of pedestrians and bicyclists. And part of that is looking at reducing speeds or getting speeds in line with the speed limits. So I just wanted to add that, the city really works hard to try to obtain grants because these projects do cost a lot.
And
um,
CalTrans is the funder of this grant.
mhm.
So
Yep.
CalTrans has provided a tremendous amount of funding for our community. Um, as most of you probably know, we have Measure Y in the city limits, which is a half-cent sales tax, which is dedicated entirely to street improvements. But it's not nearly enough. So Measure Y brings in about $3 million a year, and Andrea just described a budget of around 10 million for this tiny section of State Street. So Measure Y isn't nearly enough, but because we have that dedicated sales tax, it allows us to access a program through Caltrans called their Local Partnership Program, which provides both a direct allocation to the city, so we get a certain amount of funding just automatically based on our population. And then in addition to that, we're eligible to participate in a number of competitive grants, and those have helped fund, all kinds of projects, most recently the Perkins, Goby, and Maine improvements. So we're super appreciative to Caltrans for this program.
Yeah, and one of the benefits of the active transportation program is that the match is a minimal match. It's about 11% of the total. So this is a great grant to go after.
Yeah. Okay, well, going once, going twice. Any final questions or comments? Well, I really appreciate everyone who came out to participate in this. Your comments, your input have been really helpful. And we also just appreciate you listening and learning more about it, especially in this world where it's so easy to get misinformation from social media and wherever and just jump to conclusions. We appreciate that you took the time to actually learn what's happening here and to have a say in it. So, on behalf of the City of Ukiah and our City Council, I want to thank you all and wish you a great rest of your evening. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.